What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. Okay, let's dive into the mailbag. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram, and DM's wide open. So just fire in, get your question answered here on the show. Question for the bag. It's election season. Here we go. If any athlete in the past 50 years decided to run for president, who do you think would have the best chance of winning the White House and why? Okay, I'll pick a Republican and I'll pick a Democrat. If I had to pick a Republican, I would go Peyton Manning. I would say, now here, listen, he is well liked in the media. Once you pick that side, 98% of them are going to hate you, try to crush you. But I would say he is one of the more presidential just operators over the last 25 years. He can balance very, very well being a man of the people and also running with the elites. So he could campaign well. He can campaign really well. I think he works like on the West Coast, in the South, the Midwest. I think obviously Indianapolis. I think he would dominate the debates. I just think he's well spoken. He's got a personality. I think Peyton Manning as a Republican, and I think if you had to go on the other side of the aisle, I think you could have to go like Steph Curry, Democrat. Smiles a lot. People just like him. Just gets along with everybody. I think he'd be one of those guys that would get along with a lot of people on the other side of the aisle. Same thing with Peyton Manning. Just good at rubbing elbows. Obviously, you would have the media behind him, being on that side. And yeah, I mean, I think those two guys come to mind pretty quickly. You'd choose Peyton Manning over Brady. I think Brady would be a little more polarizing. There'd just be people that just wouldn't want to like him. I also think the work he got done, he doesn't look he's got a lot of work done. Peyton looks a little more natural. Whenever you see him at one of these Tennessee Titans, or not Tennessee Titans games, but like Tennessee Volunteer, like baseball, College World Series, he's got a little gut going. See him at the Nuggets game. He just kind of looks like a normal dude, even though he doesn't. He's huge, like he's really tall. But I'm just saying, Tom's got abs and he's got fake hair. Peyton just looks like a guy who's like eating a cheeseburger at night for dinner, even though he's probably got like a chef. I mean, so does Curry. The hard part is it'd probably be those two. And maybe that's, recency biased, but those would probably be the two I'd go to. There are clearly different approaches that front office takes to structuring contracts when they're a contender. The Bills and Cowboys did massive backloaded contracts and are now having to cut good players. What do you think is the right balance between going all in with backloaded contracts to contend now versus keeping a long-term view? I'm a Lions fan and curious how you would handle having the amount of studs on the roster Detroit does with massive contracts looming. I got news for you. The only way to do it is that. And the only reason we notice is because when you're good for a long time, you don't get rid of those players. Most crappy teams are constantly trading, cutting, and churning their roster. So even when they sign players, those guys don't last long and no one really pays attention. Well, the Bills have won the division, 4 straight years? And that core group of guys was on the team the whole time. And when you have a quarterback, same with the Cowboys, making a lot of money, and you have 3 or 4 Pro Bowl players, it adds up quick. So I don't think they do anything different than anyone else. I really don't. Look at how the Eagles structure contracts, or the 49ers. Everything is backloaded. Nothing is like a 3-year contract and you put the salary cap space. Now, the way you here's what's complicated about the NFL. If I give you a 3-year, $70 million contract, so what's that? $23 million a year, just for the way we're going to put this conversation together. So you're making $23 million a year. Adds up to 69 million, but let's just 23. You guys get it. And I pay you a $50 million signing bonus. So I give you a 3-year, $70 million, and I give you $50 million guaranteed, and I give it all up front in a signing bonus. So even though you get the cash basically within the couple weeks of signing the contract, I would never in a million years, unless I was a terrible team with just no good players on it, not put that money back, if I signed it this offseason in 26, a large percentage of it. And that's how all these contracts work. So I don't think the Bills or Cowboys are alone. I think both of them had the same scenario happen. They kept a lot of guys, and then over a 3 or 4 year period, they kind of had to purge. One reason the Chiefs were able to kind of circumvent that, because they would have been in the same exact scenario, what happened? They sent Tyreek packing. Do you know how much money that saved them? A lot. And that allowed them to kind of keep their group of players together while infusing some youth. I don't know if this is true or not, but Instagram's saying that Tyreek Hill has a lot of children. Like a lot of children. Good question, though. I just don't think any team structures contracts any differently than it. Now, you could argue the Cowboys wait the longest. I don't follow the Bills contracts close enough. Clearly the Cowboys go up until, the line, where a lot of teams, think about the team in their division. The Eagles always try to be proactive. Hopefully it saves them $5-10 million a player, where the Cowboys just ride it out. It seems like the Giants are prime for and are likely in the midst of a 30-year run of futility like the Lions before Campbell arrived. I was hoping things would turn around after Mara hired Shane instead of one of his old cronies, such as Gettleman. Hard Knocks is showing that Mara clearly is trying to influence front office decisions regarding supposed quote-unquote fan favorite. One thing on the word fan favorite, he's their best player. So it's like, and their offense is anemic beside him. So I think fan favorite gets taken out of context. I think he's just trying to say, like, this is one of the best, most popular players we've had. And we've had a lot of them. I think that's what he was saying more than like just selling jerseys. Now, some people might want to disagree, but that's owners don't talk like GMs. Players such as Saquon and Dan Jones, even if it may be in the best interest of the organization, they should move on. He comes off like a trust fund child who needs to be put in his place by the adults. It's not a stretch to think that Mara pushed for a Jones extension last year. Shane acquiesced, as it was his first real offseason as a GM, but gave himself an out after year 2. Kinda. I mean, it's still going to cost them some money. It's not, they gave him $92 million guaranteed. All I hear is everyone's like, it's a 2-year contract. Look at the contract. This year's big, but next year's not zero. It seems Shane was determined to do what he thought was right, notwithstanding external pressure from ownership. I feel like successful teams. I hear what you're saying. I don't know, man. I think part of being a good owner in football is just hiring the right guys. And hiring the right guys is really hard. Like, is Robert Kraft some fucking genius when it comes to football ownership? He's obviously was an excellent businessman. And he hired Bill Belichick, who then drafted Tom Brady. And it changed their lives. Is Jeffrey Lurie, like, he invests all the money, but he kind of went all in on Howie Roseman. And it was a smart move. When you hire the wrong people, you could argue in any industry, but more so in football than you could argue Wall Street, construction, you name it. Because the dude hiring knows, like a lot of guys, if I own a construction company, right, there's a decent chance. I'm not saying I know everything, every trade, But I bet if we just went construction owner by construction owner in your town, in your city, like they would have a background in the business, right? And have an understanding of certain things that go on a day-to-day basis of their projects. I'm not saying be masters at it. Football owners don't know a football play. Like literally wouldn't know one play in the playbook. It's not like they're scouts. They would have some understanding of the money stuff, but in terms of building it, they know nothing about it. There can't be many industries like that, right? You go to Wall Street, like Steve Cohen knows a lot about stocks, right? Warren Buffett has a pretty good idea about the market. Doesn't mean he knows everything, but like one of his employees, he can have a conversation and that employee, John Mara or Jed York or hell, Jerry is one of the rare guys. He played college football. Most of these guys are just rich kids. I mean, really, the majority of owners now in the NFL are rich kids. It doesn't mean they're not high-level guys. Yeah, like I think John Mara is a pretty high-level guy. He has just made mistake after mistake, and it looks like this is going to be a mistake as well. I would say the hires in which he made in Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll made a lot more sense than his previous hires. But I say this all the time with coordinator. Just because you're a great coordinator does not mean you're going to be the next McVay or Shanahan. More than likely, you're going to suck. History would show us that. Most GMs are going to be over their head. It doesn't mean they don't know football. It doesn't mean they don't work hard. It just means like it's a really, really difficult job. You have to balance a lot. And I just think this thing's going to go down in flames. And I don't think it's John Mara's fault. Because even though he said fan favorite, he didn't mandate that they re-signed him. I think the bigger issue is they hired what looked like two successful guys. The assistant GM from the Bills and the offensive coordinator who had coached Josh Allen his first 4 years. How could you argue those two hires? Me and you might have made those hires. But once you make those hires, you kind of keep your fingers crossed. Sometimes you just hire like Andy Reid, who's like a tight end coach, run game coordinator for the Packers in 98. You hope. And then he becomes Andy Reid. But I bet there were other coaches hired that coaching cycle that all of a sudden it's like, but this guy was working for Bill Parcells. So you just never know. And you obviously take the most educated guess you can take of like, listen, this guy's got a long resume. He's been a lot of different places. This guy helped draft these 5 players. This coordinator was excellent working with these 2 quarterbacks, but you never know because the job, it's so different. It's so different. Even as a coordinator, right? Like I say it all the time, you don't have to worry about the other side of the ball. You don't have to manage the defensive coaches. Sometimes you don't even have to manage the own coaches on your side of the ball because the head coach is doing that. Forget what the calendar says. Football season is right around the corner. And that means Best Ball Week at DraftKings isn't far behind. Here's what you need to know. DraftKings Best Ball Millionaire Contest is their biggest fantasy contest ever. We're talking 15 million guaranteed prize pool with 2. That's right, 2 millionaires being crowned for the first and second place. If you're a set it and forget it type, I know I am, then Best Ball is for you. No waiver wires, no roster management, bigger rosters, so injuries will not ruin your season. Only the draft, and that's it. You're set for the year. Some of you might have heard I won $18,000 a couple weeks ago at the U.S. Open. It's an incredible high. But $15 million in prize pool, how do you beat that? Multiple millionaires crowned with winning this. I can't even imagine the high being in the mix. And like they said, no roster management. Injuries won't impact you because you got bigger rosters. Still not convinced? Check this out. This year, DraftKings is offering everyone a draft one, get one special. Your $20 entry fee scores you a bonus ticket. Get ready for Best Ball Week at DraftKings. Download the DraftKings app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for all customers who enter the NFL Best Ball 15 Millionaire Contest to get a bonus ticket. Only during Best Ball Week, only on DraftKings. What's up? Big fan here from Mexicali, Baja, California. A question for your mailbag. If you had to bet the Chargers are going to win a ring in 10 years with Harbaugh, you take yes or no. Bonus question: In-N-Out or Five Guys? I never understand the hate on In-N-Out. I would consider myself a cheeseburger connoisseur, and I think In-N-Out's elite. I think it's elite. Now, if you want to quibble with the fries, I get it. Fries leave a little something to be desired, though I don't mind them. And I got fat because all I've been doing is drinking and eating for the last 2 weeks. My only workouts have been walks and swimming in the beach. So, but when I'm trying to be healthy, I try to avoid the French fries. The other thing that In-N-Out I think does such a great job of that really nowhere else does is they don't outthink the room. They're just so simple. You got 3 or 4 options. Honestly, like their curveball is a protein burger or animal style fries. But it's it's not the biggest business because of like Google and Facebook and Apple are headquarters in California. For how long, who knows? But In-N-Out's easily one of the best run businesses on the West Coast. And I don't think these other places can say that. So Five Guys is good. I personally prefer Shake Shack over Five Guys. But the problem with Shake Shack for us, if you're watching your weight, it's just hard to go Shake Shack and not get a milkshake with your cheeseburger. And that's just a fat move as the older you get. It's one thing, when you're young, but the older you get and, the metabolism slows, that's a gut bomb waiting to happen. Your question on the Chargers, I think that I guess I would just bet yes. I guess I would just bet yes. If Pete Carroll can win a national championship and a Super Bowl, Jim Harbaugh can as well. And I think the Chargers, 9-10 wins this year. I guess by the time we get there, we'll have to see how injuries happen during training camp. But I think I'm probably going to pick them to be the 6th or 7th wild card team just because I bet on Jim Harbaugh. And one thing I've learned since doing this podcast with takes and predictions, it's hard to go wrong betting on high-end coaches. Where you get burned is betting on question marks at the coach. It truly is. Like last year, bet on Dennis Allen and the Saints, and I got burned. I've bet on the Chargers over the years with like Anthony Lynn and Mike McCoy and Brandon Staley. Just because their roster I thought was so good. And then you get burned. So when you bet on the Harbaugh brothers, Kyle, McVay, now Dan Campbell, that's why if you want to bet on Sean Payton, I wouldn't argue with you. You're usually proven right more than wrong. And I'm not talking on, betting on an individual game. I'm just talking over the course of a season. It's a long season. And the cream usually rises, right? The cream usually rises. So that's what I would expect. I mean, look at the NFC playoff teams last year. Kyle Shanahan. We can make fun of Mike McCarthy all we want, and he deserves some criticism. Google his resume. I mean, we talk about Mike McCarthy a little different than his resume looks like. He's pretty good. Obviously, his playoff resume in Dallas leaves a little to be desired, but he's a pretty good coach. LaFleur, right? You just go Dan Campbell. Like you just start going through Todd Bowles, who I'm not sure how good he is, but that's a well-run operation with Jason Light. Sirianni, who's coaching for his job probably. Again, a little like the Bucks, the Eagles are just well run, and Sirianni now he gets better assistant coaches. Maybe it goes a little bit better.